On December 4, 1872, the crew of the Dei Gratia spotted a vessel moving erratically through the Atlantic, about 600 miles off the coast of Portugal. She was the Mary Celeste, and she was completely empty. When first mate Oliver DeVoe boarded her, the forensic condition of the ship defied logic. The cargo was completely intact. The crew's personal items, pipes, boots, razors, were left undisturbed in their quarters. The ship was sailing on course, but the people who had been steering her were gone. You might know the ghost story version of this event, which claims the boarding party found plates of warm food sitting on the galley table. Keep that detail in mind, because we are going to revisit it. A damaged ship tells a clear story of what went wrong, but a perfectly ordered vessel, stocked with 6 months of food and fresh water, is far more deeply unsettling. 10 people simply ceased to exist. The journey actually began a month earlier. On November 7th, the Mary Celeste, a 282-ton brigantine, departed New York Harbor in perfect working order. She was executing a highly routine trade route, contracted to transport 1,701 barrels of industrial alcohol to Genoa, Italy. The man in charge of the voyage was 37-year-old Benjamin Spooner Briggs. He was a veteran master mariner, well respected among sailors, and a deeply religious family man. He brought his wife Sarah and their 2-year-old daughter along for the trip. Briggs hired 7 competent, experienced seamen to handle the riggings. This was a professional maritime operation. Which leaves us with a severe contradiction. We have a seaworthy vessel, an expert captain, and his young family. What specific terror could compel a cautious father to order his family into a tiny lifeboat in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean? To find the answer, we have to rely on the official 1872 Vice Admiralty Court inquiry in Gibraltar. This is where investigators documented exactly what the boarding party found. The damage report was remarkably short. The ship had taken on 9 feet of water in the hold, an unusual amount, but highly manageable for a ship that size. The main hatch cover was removed, the compass housing was smashed, and the single lifeboat was missing. This is the actual ship's log. The final entry is dated November 25th, detailing calm weather and routine coordinates. There are no records of storms, mutiny, or distress. Following that entry, there are 9 days of absolute silence until she was found drifting. We can also strike the myth of the warm meal entirely from the record. The Gibraltar court testimony never mentions it. That detail was pure fiction, invented 12 years later in a short story written by Arthur Conan Doyle, long before he gave us Sherlock Holmes. When you remove the Victorian fiction, the remaining hard evidence points to an organized, urgent, and deliberate evacuation that totally defies conventional maritime logic. The court initially explored piracy and mutiny. Both were quickly ruled out. The valuable cargo was untouched, the crew's wages were left behind, and the deck showed zero evidence of physical violence. Some historians suggest a seaquake, a sudden underwater earthquake. While the violent shuddering of the hull could certainly panic a crew, it fails to explain the missing hatch cover or why sailors would launch a lifeboat instead of staying on a structurally sound ship. The most credible explanation, accepted by modern maritime experts, comes straight from the cargo manifest. When investigators inspected the hold, they found that 9 of the alcohol barrels were completely empty. If those specific barrels leaked, raw alcohol vapor could gather in the unventilated hold. Eventually, the pressure builds high enough to trigger a displacement blast, blowing the main hatch cover violently off the ship without actually igniting into flames. Hearing a massive boom and smelling highly flammable fumes, Captain Briggs likely concluded the ship was seconds away from a catastrophic fire. He would have ordered a temporary evacuation into the lifeboat, tethering it to the main ship with a thick tow line while they waited for the vapor to clear. But under the heavy drag of the moving ship and the churning ocean, that single tow rope failed. The Mary Celeste sailed on, leaving the 10 survivors trapped in a small wooden boat. It is a mechanically logical sequence of events, yet if it is exactly what happened, it leaves an enormous gap in the historical record. A century and a half of searching has never produced a single piece of lifeboat wreckage. The 1872 Gibraltar inquiry closed without providing any definitive answers. The court found no evidence of foul play, returning no formal verdict. The fate of the 10 crew members was officially classified as unknown. The Mary Celeste herself was repaired, but her reputation never recovered. She spent another 12 years passing between different owners, all of whom lost money trying to operate what sailors considered a cursed vessel. Finally, in January 1885, her last captain decided she was worth more as an insurance payout. He intentionally ordered the ship to be driven onto a reef off the coast of Haiti. The wreck permanently destroyed the vessel, erasing any chance modern forensic science might have had to examine the physical evidence from 1872. We engineer complex machines, draw precise maps, and enforce strict maritime laws, attempting to impose buoy on the water. But the ocean remains completely indifferent to human presence. An expert crew and a solid ship vanished without leaving a trace of debris, a human body, or a single written message. The Mary Celeste proves that the Atlantic can simply swallow us and leave us with nothing but cause unknown.